Hi, folks. Rob Goller here. Thanks for joining me for our weekly discussion of local history. Always glad to have you here. This week's discussion actually comes from a question that was posed on social media, and it piqued my interest because I've written about the topic, at least a part of the topic, previously. And the question was, why East Aurora seems to have a quirk in its house numbering system. And the question was, why does East Aurora, at least on our north-south roads, seem to not follow what is considered a national standard? And this piqued my interest because I didn't really even think about it. And I've written about house numbers before, so I was really intrigued because because I had researched it before, that I would have come across this question. But the standard is there's a standard of urban planners that's out there. So if you're planning a new neighborhood or a new community, that even numbers, house numbers and building numbers, the even numbers are on the north and west sides of the street, and the odd numbers are on the south and east sides of the street. Well, in East Aurora, our east-west roads follow that standard, that rule so Main Street, Oakwood Avenue, Girard Avenue. Your even numbers are on the north, your 700 and your 701. Your odd numbers are on the south. But when it comes to the north-south roads, your North and South Willow, North and South Grove, Sycamore Street, Center Street, the numbers are not following the standard. They're actually the exact opposite. So in East Aurora, on the west side of the street are odd numbers, and on the east side of the street are even numbers. And why is that? Why do we not follow the standard all the way? And I didn't know the answer, so I did a little digging and asked a lot of questions. And I had answered that inquiry on Facebook, saying that I would look into it, and I am. And I will link to this video to help answer it because it's much easier to talk about it, I think, than to write out all of what I've learned about it. I don't have all the answers, but I'm sharing what I have found out. So I asked the building department, I asked our assessor's office, I did some digging through the Easter Advertiser. Uh, what today is considered a standard may not have existed when our numbering system was put in place. That's it in a nutshell. So, uh, our numbering system, indeed, I did confirm that indeed the standard when you're creating a new neighborhood, planning a new development, that the even numbers would be on the north and west sides, and the odd numbers would be on the south and east sides. However, when East Aurora's numbering system goes all the way back to 1926. And what happened is the U.S. Postal Service in 1925 required a standard uniform numbering system. In East Aurora and in many communities before that, the numbers were haphazard. In East Aurora, you'd have numbers that would go up to a certain number and then switch uh, halfway down a street. Odds would be on one side on one street, and odds would be on the other side of the street on another street. There just wasn't a standard. And what ended up happening really was more people were getting their mail at home in a mailbox outside their door rather than going to pick up their mail at the post office. So you had these mail carriers, mostly male men, but we had male women too. East Aurora's actually had one of the first female mail carriers, but that's another story for another time. But they were confused, rightfully so, by all this haphazard system of numbers. So the post office is really the one that got the numbering system going, that idea. So East Aurora did implement the system following the post office's direction. We were a little late. We were behind deadline. We actually missed the deadline for it. But in January of 1926, and then through the spring, they implemented this housing system. And the person who was put in charge, so the person who decided this system, was the village engineer. And this is according to a report in the Easter Advertiser. And it was a man by the name Mr. Hammerline, who, as far as I could tell, was village engineer for many years. He pops up in there quite a bit as the village engineer. And what he did was the system started with your Main Street, your Girard Avenue, your Oakwood Avenue, the east-west roads started sequentially at the west end. A line at the west end of the village and worked its way east. North-south roads started at Main Street. So one theoretically would start at Main Street, excuse me, and make their way north-south. Um, and so everyone was given a new number. The village actually provided the physical numbers for your house. And the grid that resulted actually made it easier in the long run for emergency services, the post office. So 400 would be on the same spot of every street. So Main Street, Oakwood, 400 Oakwood to 400 Main Street, 400 Girard would all be in line. And there was this nice grid that enabled postal delivery people and anybody to more easily find an address. So that is how the addresses got started back in 1926, the system we had today. There were addresses before that. Other communities did the same thing. Actually, Wyoming County has a grid for the whole county. Here in Erie County, we do it by town. So that answers why when you're on Transit Road, transit is actually the boundary between towns. One side has one set of numbers, the other side has another set of numbers, and then as you cross into Lancaster and Cheektowaga, there's a whole another set of numbers. So because it's by town, that's what ends up happening up in on Transit Road. But here in the village of East Aurora, the reason I wrote about this topic back about house numberings system back in 2015 is when I wrote about it. Is because people were getting confused because they'd read an obituary or find someone in a phone book before 1926 and they'd see the address and they tried to find the house today. The number is different today. So there's a great Sanborn map from 1927 which came out right after they changed the number system and made the number system standardized that has both sets of numbers. So you can find those online, or just give a call to the historian's office and with an address you're trying to find, and we'll try to match up the numbers for you. But that's the one of the benefits of those wonderful 1927 Sanborn insurance maps. It has both sets of numbers. So my theory with Mr. Hammerline is that because he started at the west end with 1 for your Main Street and your Oakwood Avenue, that when he was looking at the roads, the north-south roads from Main Street, he started on the west end. He started with 1 and went right to left or left to right. That he just used the west side as his standard for starting with 1 rather than the east side, which is today's standard, because he had started at the west end with for the other streets. That's my theory. I could be wrong. I would love to hear comments from people who might have a better theory or a better answer. But that's my theory, that he just started with 1 on the west side. So the west side of the streets, the west side of north-south streets ended up being the odd numbers because that's where he started with 1. And then 1 on Main Street started at the west end. So he just started on the west end. So that's my theory. I'm going to dig a little bit more about it, but that's the reason why we have a system that doesn't necessarily follow the modern standards for house numbering. So indeed, when I checked with experts, they told me that is today's standard, but because the system is already placed in the village, they don't change it. So, for instance, the house numbers for the new development on Walnut and Prospect, they follow the system that's already in place, even though it doesn't follow the standard that would be used for another place. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear them. This topic came from somebody, so thank you so much for for joining me, and please put your comments in the comments or send me a private message. Thanks for supporting this project, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.